Yo, what's happening, guys? How you doing? This is Rob of Rule2 Review. Welcome back, and the year is almost over. It is December 30th. Holy smokes. So I figured it would be fun to do another video kind of discussing the year that was and kind of wrapping up some of the topics and some of our feelings about how the year played out. So what I wanted to do today was kind of explore how all of the three home consoles performed throughout the year in 2018. Between the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch, there was a lot of stuff for us to get excited about and a lot of stuff to play throughout the year. I think overall, probably one of the stronger years in gaming that we've had in a very long time. Again, across all three platforms. And as I've discussed, including even in my last video where I went over my top 10 games of the year, you know, the Nintendo Switch, my favorite console, and Nintendo being my favorite company and all, but I personally feel like Nintendo and the Switch actually had a pretty slow year, both in terms of comparing it to 2017, which was like out of this world incredible from a first-party Nintendo standpoint, and even kind of in general. I mean, there were some great games to play, don't get me wrong, and honestly, my top 10 games of the year list kind of showed that. I had some great multi-platform games and indie games from the Switch, as well as exclusive games. And so, while I don't necessarily want to paint a picture of a terrible year for the Switch and a year with no games, I do think it was pretty slow by comparison. And hey, I even mentioned this as well, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 had the same thing for their first 2 years of life, whereas the Switch was able to come out with an incredible year in its first year. So, you know, it is what it is, but I think it's worth kind of discussing and acknowledging when looking at how all of the consoles performed. But like I was saying, I really feel like across the board, it was just a great year for video games in the industry. Now, I know that some people might hate this kind of idea or get annoyed by this, but I enjoy this kind of approach here. And what I wanted to do is discuss which of the three home consoles, quote, won the year in 2018. And now I know some people maybe don't love the idea of trying to make it this like sort of fabricated war between the consoles and oh, it's not about competition or winning doesn't matter or there is no true way to win and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, some people like that perspective and that's fine. I'm not going to take that away from you, but I really enjoy talking about stuff in this way. So that's what I wanted to do just for fun. Does this really matter? No, it doesn't, because all the consoles had great games. The Switch, even with a slow library, still had incredible sales of the console. So, you know, these things and these conversations are pretty nebulous. You know, it's not like it super matters who won, but like I said, I find it fun to talk about, and I think a lot of people find it fun to talk about as well. So that's what I wanted to do. If we look at the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch, what really set those consoles apart from each other throughout the year to help one maybe win over the other two? Obviously, the first thing we start to think about are exclusive titles. First-party and exclusive titles that released only on those consoles. Those are the things that really do set your console apart from the competition, give your console its identity, and hopefully compel people to want to pick up and buy those consoles. If we start off looking at the PlayStation 4, it had some very, very strong titles throughout the year, and we have to keep in mind there usually isn't as many exclusive or first-party titles for a console throughout the year that we maybe think, and this year is great evidence of that. There were four big ones that I think of when it comes to the PlayStation 4. Detroit Become Human, Shadow of the Colossus, the remake, God of War, and Spider-Man are the big ones that really jump out to me as far as exclusive and or first-party stuff for Sony. And I mean, hey, God of War won so many games of the year. That was the game that I gave Game of the Year. It's not only my favorite game of this year, it's probably one of my top 2 or 3 of the entire generation. And for all I know, I mean, when, you know, years down the road, I might even look back on this God of War and say it might be one of my top 10 games of all time. I mean, right now, it's like I want to call it that, but because we're so close to the release, I want to give it a little bit of time because I think that makes a huge difference, you know, when you kind of get a little bit of distance from a game. Once the game is maybe 3 or 4 years old, that's when I can really feel comfortable saying that. It's the same way I feel about Breath of the Wild, which probably is for sure going to be a top 10 game of all time, but right now I still want to wait another couple of years and compare it to prior Zeldas with more time, and I'm doing the same here with God of War. Also, Spider-Man was a huge deal, you guys. I mean, tying in with the MCU, not so much, I don't mean that the story is tying in with the MCU, I'm sorry. I mean the fact that the MCU and Marvel are doing so well, so to release a high-profile Spider-Man game that's so well made like this, it's the MCU being in the collective conscience of the world means that people pay attention to like a Spider-Man game of this quality. and of this high profile, if that makes sense. So there's an advantage there, not to mention the fact that near the end of the year, we had the fantastic Into the Spider-Verse movie release, which has more people paying attention to Spider-Man, the characters and the names, Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And hey, Peter Parker and Miles Morales are in the Spider-Man game. So it's just like the Spider-Man and Marvel and MCU ethosphere really fed into this game, being super successful, also nominated for a lot of Game of the Year, and just being a damn excellent game. Now, on the Xbox One side, things are admittedly a bit slower. I actually had to remind myself of some of the exclusive games that came out throughout the year, because there was only one that initially jumped to mind. So the three main ones that I could really find or think of for the Xbox One in 2018 are Forza Horizon 4, which is supposed to be absolutely incredible, and I'm actually thinking about buying it, Sea of Thieves, which I completely forgot about, and then State of Decay 2, which I also completely forgot about. So as far as exclusives, first-party stuff, that's kind of what I think the Xbox really had to hang its hat on throughout the year. Nothing too impressive. I mean, there was a bit of hype going into Sea of Thieves for sure, and I had kind of a roller coaster when I was considering that game. I went on a roller coaster of thoughts and emotions, because when it was first revealed, I was disappointed and not into it, and it's like, this is what Rare is doing after all these years? Come on, man, this is lame, you know, online pirate booty collecting thing or whatever. I just didn't really care about it. But then the second time it was showed off at E3, it actually looked really good and had convinced me, but then the hype died down before launch because it was becoming apparent that there really wasn't a lot to do or enjoy in the game, and I know that the game has really not seen a whole lot of success since it actually launched. Forza Horizon 4, like I was just saying, that's a game that I don't know why I really want that game. It just looks actually really great, and I don't normally like racing games and racing sims like this sort of experience. And now, from what I understand, the Horizon Forza games are actually supposed to be a little bit more arcadey and less realistic compared to the regular Forza games, so that's good to know, and that helps me be a little bit more excited about it. And, you know, it is beautiful, and I like the idea of maybe having something kind of just relaxing and beautiful to just sort of play and just drive around and have fun in. I really think I'm actually going to commit myself to picking up this game, because it's probably really good. I mean, it reviewed well and sold very well. I think a couple million copies. So that's a great game to throw into the Xbox's ring. I feel like every year they have a Forza game. I think they must do like one Forza game, and then they follow the following year with the Horizon, and then they go back to Forza, and they sort of just like stagger them like Call of Duty does, is what it seems. So, you know, there's that. And then State of Decay 2, you know, like a post-apocalyptic zombie thing that I guess was okay, but not great, kind of buggy. And, you know, some people find it really fun, some people really find it pretty bad. So people seem to be split on that game. But really, I mean, it'd be nice to say there were some bigger first-party games like a Halo or a Gears of War. If Crackdown had actually made it out this year, that would have been huge for the Xbox in 2018. It was really just kind of a bunch of third-party games on the console for the most part. So not necessarily bad exclusive games, just nothing that's really earth-shattering. And now, of course, that brings us to the Nintendo Switch. And I already kind of discussed this. This is the trickiest one for me, because there are some good first-party games to talk about. There are also some not very exciting first-party or exclusive games to talk about. And overall, I think it's the fact that we all want to compare it to 2017, which is kind of unfair, that makes us realize or think that maybe it was a little bit slower for the Switch. But then you go over these games and it's like, was it that slow compared to the PlayStation and Xbox? Maybe, maybe not. You know, tough for me to say. Not to mention, I have a little bit of fanboy bias just because Nintendo's my favorite company. So it's like I maybe give it a little bit more credit than it deserves. But either way, when we look at some of the Switch games, we started off early with the Kirby Star Allies, which is a game that did not excite me. I played the demo, and it really wasn't all that great, so I decided not to pick up the game. And apparently the game is just okay, but again, not really lighting anyone's pants on fire. Then there was a huge one, Octopath Traveler, man. This is a great, great game to add into the 2018 hat. Let's Go Pokemon came out near the end of the year for people who are Pokemon fans. Super Mario Party, not really making a big splash, but apparently great with couch co-op. And then, of course, the big daddy, which is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is on par as far as impact and quality with something like God of War and Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. This is the seminal Nintendo Switch release for the year. It's a seminal release anytime it releases. I mean, a new Smash Brothers game is an event every couple of years when we get one, and most people would agree it seems like they've made the best Smash Brothers game yet. So being one of the hugest franchises in the industry, one of the biggest sellers in the industry, one of the biggest and best first-party Nintendo franchises, and having the best one ever release in this year makes it pretty good for the Nintendo Switch. It means we had some pretty solid stuff. So, You know, like I said, you look at Kirby and you look at Mario Party, those are games that, while I know they have their fans, I don't think made huge impacts. I don't think they sold, like, exceptionally well. I don't think they bombed by any stretch either, so I'm sure they did okay. But they definitely didn't make a huge sales impact. They didn't make a huge, like, cultural impact because people really didn't seem to care too much about those games at the end of the day. The games that did make big impact, Octopath Traveler, Let's Go Pokemon, and Smash Brothers. And hey, that's 3 big, excellent games. And if you saw my top 10 of the year list, you know that Octopath and Smash Brothers made it. Smash Brothers was almost number 1. It's that good. So those are huge wins. Octopath being a third-party developed Square Enix game for the Switch, that's pretty huge. One of the best RPGs in a very, very long time, according to myself and most people. And Let's Go Pokemon, I mean, you guys know I don't have much to say about that because I'm not a Pokemon guy, but what was interesting with Let's Go Pokemon, what I enjoyed about that is throughout the year, watching people's reactions, people who are Pokemon fans discuss and dissect and really kind of fight over this game and what they felt about the Let's Go games, borrowing some of the mechanics from Pokemon Go, the mobile game, and bringing it to a console Pokemon game. And people wanted to say it is a spin-off, it isn't a spin-off, spin-offs are good, spin-offs are bad, Let's Go's good, Let's Go's bad. You know, I mean, it just was a really interesting thing to watch throughout the year. And I'm really never going to play it because I just don't really care. But at the end of the day, it was an incredibly well-selling game. The reviews were okay. And make no mistake, man, yes, there's a huge contingent of people and Pokemon fans that hate those games and just don't like them and want them to go away. But honestly, I think at the end of the day, now that they've been out for, you know, a couple weeks, couple months here, I feel like I've seen more Pokemon fans enjoy the games and talk positively about them than I've seen people talk negatively about them. So I think the overall reception from the Pokemon community has been solid and positive for Let's Go Pokemon. So to me, that tells me that it's another great game to throw into the 2018 hat for Nintendo. You know, we also can't discount, when you talk about a year, the fact that there was a bunch of kick-ass third-party games, multi-platform third-party games that released on multiple or all 3 consoles. That's a big part of every year, and there was a host of games to talk about. I mean, just this quick list I put together here: Monster Hunter World, Red Dead Redemption 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Mega Man 11, Dead Cells, Far Cry 5, Celeste, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Soul Calibur 6, Starlink Battle for Atlas, Darksiders 3, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Tomb Raider, whatever that, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That's a lot of games right there, man. Those released on multiple platforms. Many of them actually released on all 3. Like, a surprising amount did release on all 3. But of course, we know that unfortunately, a lot of times with these, the Nintendo console, the Nintendo Switch will get left out. And I think about more than half of these did not release also on the Nintendo Switch. So while that helps the Xbox and PlayStation libraries, in some ways it kind of hinders the Nintendo Switch library when you start to compile all of the games total. You know, the other part of the conversation, of course, is indie games. And while I'm not a big indie game player myself overall, you know, indies were strong this year. Indies are strong every year. A lot of indie games releasing on all 3 consoles. Nintendo probably is actually still the king as far as indie games and indie content. So that's something that helps out the Nintendo Switch when you look at it. So overall, you know, I mean, hey, I just named a bunch of games for a bunch of consoles. It was a great year. 2018 was really solid. But who actually won the year? You know, one could also throw controversies in here when you want to actually consider how the consoles performed and the companies performed. I don't know that it's necessarily something worth considering, but it is interesting to talk about. As far as I'm concerned, there were 2 main console or company-focused scandals, so to speak, throughout the year, controversies. And I will say, to Xbox's credit, I don't really think there was an Xbox One or a Microsoft-specific controversy this year, other than, like, delaying Crackdown 3, which we're not really going to count that. That's whatever. I mean, really, Microsoft kind of got away pretty clean this year, but Nintendo and Sony, they had some pretty big goofs this year, and they were definitely in the news in different points of the year for some not great stuff. When we look at Nintendo, it's Nintendo Online, man. That was a big controversy. There are problems. I'm overall not really caring about the issues most people have, but there are issues that I agree with being problems, and people did and still have major issues with how Nintendo's dropping the ball with their online. From the fact that there's not a lot of features, to the lack of voice chat, to the inclusion of the stupid cell phone app. You know, the Nintendo games didn't really light anyone's pants on fire either, the NES games. I mean, people really have problems with the fact that overall the service isn't of great quality. Not to mention that, while Smash Bros. Ultimate works online better than any previous Smash Online, it still isn't great, so there still seems to be server and connection issues. And the fact that Nintendo's finally charging people for online, but is still lacking features and stable connections, yeah, it's a problem. The cloud save thing didn't work for every game. I mean, there's just a lot of issues when you look at Nintendo's online. And while, like I said, I can be okay with it, it's a big problem for a lot of people, so that counts. On the Sony side, it's crossplay. That was a huge kerfuffle in the middle of the year, man. You know, and the whole thing with Fortnite, and you couldn't move your Fortnite stuff from Sony's PlayStation 4 to a Switch or an Xbox, but Microsoft and Nintendo are doing such a great job allowing crossplay. Sony seems the odd man out, seems to be very anti-consumer, and that was a big issue. And I initially thought that, you know, while I acknowledged it was a problem, I thought it was kind of going to go away and not be a big issue. That kind of turned out to not be the case, man, because people wouldn't let it go, and they were riding Sony about this and complaining and saying, this is so bad, you're screwing people over, you're screwing Fortnite people over and PlayStation fans over. This is anti-consumer, Sony, you suck. Like, that's kind of what the narrative was. You know, look at how great Nintendo and Microsoft are, and you're getting trounced by them. You guys are lame. And so, you know, to Sony's kind of credit, they did lighten up on Fortnite specifically, and they're testing the idea of crossplay by allowing crossplay only with that game, I believe, and I do think future games will start to allow it, so hopefully it will improve. But yeah, that was another big controversy that Sony really took a lot of heat from, and I guess at the end of the day, deservedly so, even though I don't really care about crossplay, like, people do, and so Sony actually had to do something about it. So, which console won the year of 2018? You know, just remember, hey, this is just my opinion, and I'm only one guy. This isn't about me telling you how to feel. This is me just sharing how I feel. There is no right or wrong answer here. This isn't about a completely objective fact, and you can't dispute it. Everyone can feel differently based on what they look for. Based on what I look for in gaming and in video games and in the industry, and as somebody who runs this YouTube channel, my personal opinion is, honestly, PlayStation 4, man. I know it may surprise you guys because you know I'm a Nintendo gamer first and foremost, and as absolutely spectacular as Smash Bros. Ultimate and Octopath were for me, at the end of the day, I think I got the most enjoyment out of my PlayStation 4, and I think the impact of their exclusives, God of War and Spider-Man specifically, are so big and so far-reaching, and then you throw in the fact that games like Red Dead and Call of Duty and Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed and then all the other, just basically every third-party multi-platform game is also a part of that library. Monster Hunter World as well, one of my favorites of the year. And unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have a lot or most of those games. I think I just have to give it to the PlayStation 4. It seems like they still had tremendous sales success. They had tremendous exclusive content success. They had all these tremendous and well-loved third-party games. And yes, they had a controversy, and Microsoft, again, has a boon in their cap by not having any. I still just think that the biggest impact this year was felt by the PlayStation 4. Both for me, and I think in terms of the industry. I don't want to discount you guys, because I know a lot of you, most of my followers are Nintendo fans, and so maybe you don't love hearing me say I don't think the Switch had the best year. But I think that we have to remember, the Switch still had great sales. It was recently confirmed in the first 21 months, the Switch is the fastest selling console ever, even faster than the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So sales-wise, Switch is still kicking ass. And we can't discount Smash Bros., Octopath, and Pokemon for Pokemon fans. Those are huge games. The Switch had some great stuff this year. And again, some of my favorite third-party games like Dead Cells and Mega Man 11 and Celeste I didn't have a chance to play, but obviously a great game. Shallow Knight obviously came out this year as well. There were great games to play on the Switch. So it's close. The Switch was closer to winning over the PlayStation 4 than I anticipated going into this conversation, but I can't at the end of the day overlook the quality of games like God of War and Spider-Man, man. I just can't do it. They're just too good. So for me, I would say that, yeah, the PlayStation 4 won the year. But a reminder at the end of this video, this doesn't really matter at the end of the day. This is just for fun. It's just interesting, just like, a console winning E3 every year doesn't truly matter, but it is fun to talk about, and we all like to have our sides and our opinions and discuss and debate what we think and have a conversation with our fellow gamers and our friends about which console won. Same with the end of the year, man, and that's basically what I'm doing here. So, hey, 2019 is going to be great. I think it's going to be the best year in gaming we've seen in almost a decade, and that includes the Nintendo Switch. We know the Nintendo Switch is going to put up a much tougher fight next year Holy smokes, especially if games like Bayonetta and Metroid Prime 4 are actually thrown into the 20-night ring, on top of games like Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing and Pokemon and oh my god, so many great things, it's going to be insane. So what do you guys think about 2018? Which console do you think won or had the best year? If you don't think it matters, that's fine, and you can yell at me in the comments below. You have fun with that, but I like doing this because it's fun. So anyway, I know I said that a couple times. Got to really drive that point home. So at the end of the day, that's it. Please discuss your guys' feelings below. Thanks as always for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you guys next year on Rule of 2 Review.